Welcome, Simon Jacobson, special edition of Wednesday Night Live. A little later than usual because I literally just got off a flight from the Holy Land, the Promised Land. And this special edition is dedicated to the stunning election of Donald Trump as the president, the 45th president of the United States of America. I was in Israel actually when the election results were coming in. And flying here in this surreal environment in the clouds gave me a lot of thought, reading the reactions from words like stunning, shocking, upset, a shocker, the greatest shocker in the history of presidential elections, and on and on. Many people writing how they're grieving and mourning for this day. But no matter who you are, no matter what your opinion is, it definitely reflects something that no one expected. A person without a political apparatus, without political experience, without the well-oiled machine like the Clintons had, without spending nearly that amount of money, someone who many times put his foot in his mouth, did almost everything possibly wrong to offend people. Someone whose own party, the Republican Party, rejected. And despite all the odds, first winning the nomination and now the election, Donald Trump pulled it off. And everybody's wondering how. What happened here? How did everybody get it so wrong? The establishment, the government, the media. Some said it would be a landslide, a Clinton landslide. Some said it was be close, but definitely she would win. And I'm sure these questions will be asked for the years to come, because it's still, when you look at the media people reporting as the election results coming in different states, they were like frozen like a deer in the headlights. And it's still stunning. It's only a day later. And the questions keep pouring in. Is Trump a genius? Is it due to the fact that he was able to tap into some type of the pulse of an angry blue-collar America, as some are suggesting? There's clearly much more going on here than all the analysis, because everybody vilified him. So many people vilified him. Very few people predicted that he would win. Even those that were in his camp, I don't know how convinced they were, or they were just saying it to convince themselves and others. So this is a very important question to ask, because especially when you step back, which is critical in times like this, to step back, because when you're living in a moment, you get overwhelmed by the details, and times you have to step back and look at the bigger picture. Because events like this can only be really understood in context, historical context. And this has very little to do with the candidate, Mr. Trump himself. It has to do with the climate of the times, the situation of the world. And that's why I want to address this special edition here. So, as I said, I don't know if anyone will ever come up with answers. A person who did not was never elected off, it was never a senator or a representative or a governor or a mayor, someone who did not come from the military. So it's unprecedented, literally. 44 presidents, everyone had some either prior office, some political office, or George Washington was a general in the United States Army, military, and led the Revolutionary War. So when you list all the odds and the possibilities, it becomes something that you realize is beyond one particular or two particular or three particular analysis and events and circumstances. At times like this, we have to think in terms of the junctures that we find in history. There are moments in history where watershed moments, where shifts take place. And these shifts, particularly because they're so shifting and changing the reality as we know it, the status quo as we know it, that's why they are so disturbing at times. Now, when we see something that shocks us or stuns us, Again, I'm not getting now into whether you like the results or don't like the results, but something that is definitely not the ordinary. There's really two things that happen that are a possibility that can happen. One is that you're shocked, it overwhelms you, and you try to make some sense of it, and sometimes it's demoralizing, and it definitely upsets the whole barrel, the whole comfort zone that we're in. That's one way to look at it. And then actually it weakens and causes all kinds of emotional reactions that are not necessarily positive ones. Another way to look at something that shocks you or stuns you or something that is not in the ordinary is to see it as perhaps a new reality is emerging, and instead of trying to fit it into your understanding or comfort zone, to be humbled and to stand with humility and see what is going on. Now really the two ways of looking at things is really whether you look with your ego. If you're invested in a particular situation, in a particular prejudice or bias, so obviously when things don't work out the way you like, you're going to be overwhelmed, and you will be demoralized, or in some ways disoriented by the changes to your comfort zone, to your status quo. However, if you don't think with your ego and you put yourself aside, you just look at something from a broader perspective, then these events can be signs and essentially like tremors, telling us that there's something greater, some seismic event happening that we have to be ready for and be open to. Now, when you look in the media, and this is frankly one of the things that really struck me, is how venerable and reputable media outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, how they didn't just report the news, but they were vilifying and trying to actually influence the results of this election, to the point that it was considered a joke. And not only a joke, even when they saw that you have to take Trump seriously, it was a real crusade against him. So when you see media outlets that are meant, even if they may have a position, one may be more liberal, one may be more conservative, but you see media outlets going out to war because they feel this is their self-righteousness of thinking they know what it's at, then you see their reactions. It didn't work out the way they expected, so it's a sad day. The New York Times writes in its editorial today, we're on the precipice. Thomas Friedman, in his self-righteousness, writes how he's mourning and grieving. I mean, why don't you just be humble and say, you know what, the majority of the United States of America, of a democracy, voted in a fair and square election, and maybe you should be looking to them to learn something instead of you looking at and sticking with your own perspective and now saying it didn't work out, trying to shape reality according to your opinions. And that may even be one of the factors that gave Trump such a victory. The arrogance that many people sensed that backfired, with all the pulling out all the plugs and trying to do whatever possible to destroy this man, even if you have legitimate concerns, but perhaps backfired because who gave you the right to determine that? Why can't every human being determine for themselves, which is exactly what self-determination is in a democracy? If it was the other way around, when President Obama was elected, and many people on the right didn't like it, I didn't see words like grieving and mourning. Maybe there was someone that wrote that, but it was definitely not the sentiment. So there's this self-righteousness that we have to get rid of and stop thinking in terms of, I have it figured out, and now I have to wonder what happened here. As if you are the arbiter and the standard of truth, and if the results are not the way you expected it, what happened? Maybe something happened. Maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're the one that has to look at yourself and say, maybe I don't get it right. Maybe I didn't get it right. Now, again, this goes far beyond the man that is Mr. Trump. This goes into the whole attitude that we have when things happen in the ways that we expected or didn't not expect. So let me go back to the point I was making. When things happen that that are surprising, that were not the unexpected events, you could either go with it. My comfort zone and my status quo is most important, and I have to figure out how this anomaly fits in or doesn't fit in, or you have a much more flexible attitude that there maybe are greater forces at work. And now when you look at history, There are times in history that there are junctions. There's always forces at work that are behind the scenes. But there are times where it becomes very obvious that there's an invisible hand that is moving and guiding events in ways that we cannot fully predict or understand. Just like the surprising Brexit vote of Great Britain pulling out from the EU, from the European Union, just a while back. Just as other changes that took place that we did not expect what would come next. This too is a context of a period in time in history, historical time where major changes are taking place. And this is part of that context. If you think of it that way, then actually it can be seen as an unbelievable blessing. I don't know what Mr. Trump's policies are and how he's going to govern. As I said, that's not so relevant here. What's relevant here is that a man, against all odds, that everyone laughed off as impossible, almost a parody, has become now and will be the president, the 45th president of this country. Basically, the most powerful man in the world. Now, we know in Jewish thought there's an expression from the book of Proverbs that the heart, Lev Melachim v'Sarim b'Yad Hashem, the heart of kings and ministers is in the hand of God. So in other words, as many people put it, especially with the President of the United States, that the position makes the person more than the person making the position. Because once you rise to that place, firstly you have that blessing from above that gives a person a different level of wisdom. And even on a natural level, when you're in that type of position, and there's many, and you're dealing with millions of people that you can shape and define their lives, it changes a person's attitude. Everyone talks about Harry Truman, who was the vice president and never elected in office. He was the vice president of FDR when he died in the middle of his fourth term and the end of World War II. And he ended up making the haberdasher from Missouri, ended up making maybe one of the most crucial decisions in human history, dropping the atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing hundreds of thousands of people immediately, maiming and affecting people till this very day. The position makes the person. We will never know. Some say he made a mistake. He shouldn't have done it. Others say he saved millions of lives because the war would never have stopped. But he did it. So the positions make people. So we have to firstly pray that God put the right wisdom and sensitivity in the new president's heart and soul, and that he be receptive to it. We pray b'shleim shalmachos. We pray for the government because the government the Jews prayed for the governments even when the governments were oppressive, times of the Tsar, times of anti-Semitism, and so on. Because at the end of the day, there's some power that every leader has, even a leader that is a tyrant and a wicked person has a power. And we pray, firstly, that they should not be wicked, obviously. In this case, thank God, we live in a free world. The United States is a free country. There are rules, there are laws that protect the rights of people. No president has ever abrogated those laws and doesn't have the capacity to do so. So all this fear-mongering and all this wringing of hands is going to destroy the basis. No, there's a Declaration of Independence. We have 44 presidents of very different dispositions and different opinions, and from the left and the right and the Democrats and the Republicans and the Whigs and all the other different parties in the earlier part of this republic's history. And the foundations of the United States remain intact as long as we respect them. In this case, again, that if the liberal left would respect the fact that all people are created equal, not just left-wing people, but right-wing as well, and blue-collar as well. And if a majority votes, it's not a time to grieve. You know what it is? A time to embrace, a time to question your own opinions. Don't be so righteous, self-righteous. You know, maybe this is a refutation and repudiation of President Obama, who led the country for 8 years. And here's someone who represents everything against Obama. Hillary Clinton was a continuation of Obama. Maybe that's what should be looked at. Why the United States, the country, the majority of this country voted for the policies for a person who represented something that they elected 8 years ago. Maybe they're disappointed in the results. I haven't seen people say that so openly. They say, yes, they rejected it, but they're not ready to say that it's legitimate, this rejection. Now, yes, we have a country, there are different various opinions, and that's exactly what a freedom and democracy is. People can state their vote. But now is the time to unite behind the new leader, who, frankly, we all do not know what's going to happen. He has no record. He has no leadership record. He has no record in the government. So we have no idea. So which could also turn out to be excellent because he's a clean slate in that sense. He doesn't have the prejudices, the biases of being a government official. And if he puts the right people in the administration and delegates well, it can be an excellent time for our country. But these are things that we will find out. But what we have to do right now is have that humility and realize that the shock and the stunning and all the other adjectives being used of this event by everyone is a wake-up call that the status quo is not acceptable. And that we are at a point, a juncture in history, where the invisible hand is showing its face, or it's showing its hand that we're ready to enter a new world order. And what does a new world order mean? Let's go back to the basis of this country. We have it on the currency of the U.S. currency, in God we trust. E pluribus unum, from the many one. The idea of the morality and the ethics built on, as the Declaration of Independence says, that all people are created equal. It says all men, but meaning all people are created equal, and we all have inalienable rights bestowed upon us by our Creator. That's the foundation of this country. It doesn't talk about liberals, it doesn't talk about conservatives, it talks about all are equal. And that there is a divine force that is the bedrock and the foundation. Now, how each of us manifests that divine force, that's freedom of religion. No one's telling you how to do it. But the foundation of it all is based on an understanding that we are in this type of country where we are allowed, each of us, to choose as we see fit the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of religion, the pursuit of faith, and all the basics that every human being deserves, the birthright endowed to us by the Creator. Every president of the United States pledges to uphold those principles. That's what this country is all about. And there's no president that's immune of that. If we all took that attitude, then we have the beginning, the axiom, the foundation upon everything else can be built. Then come policies, whether it's trade policies, immigration policies, other policies. But the most important thing is to embrace that. And perhaps this country has lost its way in a way. And that's why something stunning has to happen to shake up the system and show that what we have till now is not working properly. Again, this is not about the president-elect, his personality and his disposition. It has nothing to do with him. He may be an agent completely unknown to him, unbeknownst to him, of this invisible hand. And this invisible hand has appeared throughout history, as I mentioned, many times. And if you really look closely, it's always there. But as I said, there are moments when you see watershed moments where you see those shifts. So that's what I would like to submit, that the events happening in the world in general, take the Muslim extremism, Muslim terrorism, which September 11th brought that reality to the shores of the United States. But that reality was very present in the Middle East, in Israel. And we all know that usually events that start affecting the world always affect Israel and the Jewish people first. Look at Hitler, God forbid. Who did he attack? The Jews. And you can rest assured that it comes to the rest of the world. So that's one cataclysmic event, the clash of civilizations. Look what's going on in Europe. And now in the United States of America, that is bringing the markets down. Like, that's the biggest litmus test. Maybe that's a good sign. It's shaking up the existing comfort zones. Now, as I said, a shake-up can be seen a tremor, it can be seen as an earthquake, it can be seen as a groundswell, it can be seen as something that is just disturbing many people, or it can be seen as, I use the word convulsions, you can use the word contractions, but convulsions that are leading to a new world order, like a birthing, the birth pangs that are painful, but are necessary because there's no way you can can begin a new system if the old system is still standing strong. The internet and technology is yet another example, shaking up pre-existing institutions, methodologies, marketing, and so on. However, we human beings are people that live in the here and now, and we want our little comfort zones. But then there are events that take place that there's no way that you can avoid, and we have to look at what is going on in the broader sense of the world. So I want to say to you that we're living in extraordinary times, and this is an opportunity for all of us to look at the beginning of a new world order. Yes, the dawn of a new era. Now, some of you I know will say this is sacrilegious. How could you say that? Trump is a buffoon. He's a womanizer. He's all this and all that. As I said, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about the event. And he will be the president of the United States for the next 4 years. Not that we have to just succumb and accept it and resign ourselves, but we have to look, as I said, as a bigger picture. And he's an unknown. We don't know what he's going to do. So if we go with this attitude, it changes the whole perspective of how we look at things. And interestingly, this week is exactly that theme. The theme of Lech Lecha is, what is the theme of the first true leader, Abraham, the first true pioneer, and it begins with Lech Lecha Ma'aretzecha, to leave his homeland, his birthplace, and the home of his parents. To go to the land that I will show you, God says to him, the promised land. Now, if you need transition, that's the ultimate transition, Lech Lecha. And as I've discussed many times, what's the Lech Lecha? Leaving what? Why does the Torah have to be redundant, repeat 3 times the place of departure? Artzecha, your land, Maladcha, your birthplace, and Beis Avicha, the home of your parents. He knows where he lives, and especially Abraham had all 3 together. Some people are born in one place, live in another place, and their parents are in a third place. With Abraham, what is today southeastern Iraq, that's where Abraham was born, or Kazdim, excuse me, and lived there, so he knew where he was. So why does God have to repeat them 3 times, 3 different ways of describing where he was? And when it comes to the destination, that's where he really needs to know where to go. It's a vague, the land that I will show you. Is it east? Is it west? Is it north? Is it south? Where is it? When you give someone directions, you don't have to tell them where they're leaving from. They know where they are. You need to tell them where to go. To what city, to what country, to what street, to what address. So as I've discussed a number of times based on Hasidic texts, that this is the command to each one of us, to leave our comfort zones. You want to discover yourself, the land that I will show you, not the land, I will show you the land. I will show you who you really are. How do you know who you really are unless you free yourself from the forces that shape you? And those are 3 types of forces. Your natural biases and prejudices. That's the first comfort zone. Your subjectivity on that level. There's a second form of subjectivity that is based on parental influences, Beis Avicha. And a third one is based on Artzecha, the land at which you live, peer pressure, social pressure, the standards of our times. So when you're dealing with these 3 forces, God is telling us, each one of us, starting with the pioneer Abraham, our forefather, our patriarch, you want to find yourself who you really are, you need to get out of your comfort zone. But getting out of a comfort zone is uncomfortable. That's exactly what the point is. It is a shift. It's a transition. And you'll see all greatness always comes as a result of a journey of that nature. So my friends, we are now also on a journey. Each one of us in our lives is in a journey. So there are times in the journey where you're going on a road, you more or less know it's predictable, it's no surprises. But then you suddenly hit a place where there's a complete unexpected turn, unexpected events, shocking events, stunning events, upsets, and it may even make you very, very uncomfortable. But what does an adult do? A humble person doesn't say, oh, I'm always right, and this unexpected thing I have to get rid of, or I have to explain away, or I have to just tolerate it. No. What you do is realize it's an opportunity for you to journey and travel to a new place, get beyond yourself and your own biases. Now, I wish everyone in the establishment and in the media and in the government would take this lesson. Because that's the bottom line lesson. It has nothing to do with Mr. Trump. He's the agent. He's the so-called catalyst and the force here that actualized this. But it's about what we learn from transitions like this. And when we take such an attitude, then the transition can be one that really brings a new birthing, a new experience, something that is completely beyond what we've had before. Because as Einstein and other scientists have put it, you can't change a system from within a system. You need something from outside the system. You need a disruptive force. And many have coined Trump as a disruptor. Now, some people may not like the way he disrupts and the disruption itself. But now it's a reality. He has disrupted everything that this country stood for, everything we so-called depended on, relied on, expected, predicted, all fell on the wayside in a surprising evening. As it unfolded, it was stunning as it unfolded. You saw the faces of the media people like you couldn't believe it. How one state after another, states that no one even expected, how he won those states. So we have an invisible hand that is guiding us to a new world order, should we choose to be wise and understand that. And it's interesting, in the previous chapter, we learned about Noah and the flood. Was also a new world order. There was a destruction, God forbid, of a very wicked and cruel world that self-destructed. And then came Noah, Elam Chadash Ra, who saw and built a new world. But the pioneer Abraham, which we read about this week, is the one that really begins to realize and fulfill the purpose for which this world was created. And that is to make it a divine home. A world where virtue and justice and compassion are the dominating forces. Not whether we're going to make more money or less money. That's a means. What is the end? What is the higher end? The higher end is the transformation and the refinement of our lives, of the world in which we live. And the institutions and systems that serve that will have enduring power. Now we're seeing institutions, establishments falling and deeply wounded. And I would say it's a positive thing, because it's a disruption of an existing status quo in order to build a better world. Now we hope and pray, as I said, that Mr. Trump will be the right agent. He's now been elected, and there's definitely a divine hand in that, but that he will be more than just receptive, but a true channel of what God wants of this world. And we have to do our part to recognize this moment as such. So when you see something that is so disruptive, something that is so unexpected, that's the Torah way of how to look at it, as a lech lecha, as a journey into a new state, into a new place. Now, as I said before, I'm not going to make any predictions. I do not know how things are going to evolve. I do know what we live in a world that needs positive change. And the bottom line is, from my point of view, is that it all begins with spiritual change. It all begins with the spiritual open receptivity to understanding the purpose for which we live in this world. Now, some of you may say, well, Mr. Trump doesn't necessarily represent spirituality or morals or ethics and so on. Well, Hillary Clinton, I think most of us agree, also wouldn't have. So that's not the issue. Both candidates were neither that. But as I said, the position makes the person. This doesn't mean that they cannot. Remember, the United States is stronger than any of its presidents. Its principles, which are built on foundations and on pillars that have endured and that are based on biblical spiritual teachings. As I mentioned before, that all people are created equal and are inalienable rights. That's more powerful than anyone sitting in the Oval Office. Their role is to administrate that, to facilitate that. And our role as people of the United States citizens or the world citizens is to push for that, to demand that. And not, instead of looking and saying, okay, what are you going to do for me? Maybe say, these are the standards that we expect. And if people can get off their high horse and their ivory towers, including all these venerable media outlets, and those that still feel basically betrayed, and stop thinking in those terms, but thinking in terms of, be a little humble and realize there's something greater than you are, just like there's something greater than Mr. Trump and greater than the Clintons, and that is the invisible hand that drives the destiny of nations, and that drives the destiny of empires, and the destiny of governments. That we all recognize that and see what we can do our part to make sure that it's implemented and brought out and brought out in actualization and in concrete ways. We live in a country that, as I said, is built on these principles. A country that unprecedented amounts of charity and rewards those that give charity, that helps the impoverished, that is welcomes those that were persecuted and oppressed, which was really what the founding fathers themselves, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and founded this country, because they were oppressed, and they felt the need to build a country that would have that type of assurance, to be a haven to all those that seek freedom, and seek freedom of religion and freedom of expression. So this is the foundation that really began almost 3,800 years ago with Abraham the pioneer. So it's fascinating that in this week of Lech Lecha, we're beginning a new journey. And that's how we should look at it. And there's something exhilarating, even about a journey that we do not know where it's going. Actually, that's what makes it even more exhilarating. You know where you're going, it's not as exciting. When you know it's a new path, a road untraveled up till now, that can be extremely exciting, or it can be very intimidating. But if you take the approach that this is a juncture in history where the invisible hand is showing its guiding force, that we can turn this world into a better world order, then we know we're going in the right direction. Now, I intend to write a letter to Mr. Trump and articulate some of these ideas. We actually honored him a few years ago at the Algemeine Gala, so maybe we have a little access. And I really believe, because he's not jaded by the existing government prejudices and so on. He may be jaded in other ways, but not by that perhaps he can be a president that can be open to ideas that others that are political veterans and experienced simply would not be receptive to, because they just would go by the old rules. So we have to look at it in that fashion, and I hope this helps. Now, I'm sure some of you may send me some hate mail. How could I even utter such words about Trump? But I just ask you to consider, number one, he is going to be the president, and that you have to deal with. Either you can just bite your lips and say, okay, I'll just swallow it for 4 years. What kind of life is that? Is that the way a leader and someone that takes initiative and a proactive person lives, biting their lips and essentially waiting it out? That's number one. So to do something positive. Number two, maybe get off your horse, maybe get off your opinions, and realize that sometimes things happen in order to allow us to have new opportunities. Now you could say, I don't see any way that he could be a good president. I can't see how his policies. Why don't we wait and see? I know as much as you know. We don't know what the future holds. I don't even know if Mr. Trump knows what the future holds. But I think it's an opportunity for us all to step back and look at it that way. And this has nothing to do, again, with the support of which candidate. I know people are crying over the fact that Hillary Clinton lost the election. I saw it in her campaign headquarters. Okay, fine. There's a certain loyalty you cry. But to grieve and cry as if there's like the end of the freedoms of America, as Thomas Friedman writes, or some others write, I think is arrogant. And back to the self-righteousness that you have it all figured out. Maybe just be humble and say, you know something, I don't understand what happened. I don't even agree with it, but it happened. And maybe it's time to wake up and say, okay, it happened. Now what do I learn from this? Instead of just, hinting to the fears, and should I leave this country, or how do I explain this to children? Like what? Why did you tell your children why did you compare Trump to Hitler in the first place? That now what are you going to tell your children once he won the election? Maybe you did it wrong. Maybe you shouldn't have told your children things like that. Maybe you should tell your children that, every human being has the opportunity to do things right. We know there's his record. I'm not friends with Mr. Trump. I'm not even as a supporter per se, but I'm watching what's happening, and why not give him the equal right? No one knew what Mr. Obama would do. He was also pretty much untested. He was a senator, but not for that long. Now, some say the country didn't vote it against him now. However you interpret that, let's say even that's not the case. Why can't we give people the opportunity to serve, since that's already a fait accompli, and that's what happened? Now, I go even a step further, as I said, that you have to look at the bigger picture. In my short span of my life so far, I've seen many presidents. I haven't seen any that have dramatically changed everything. Everyone's part of a process. Reagan, they say, Reaganomics and other things did many positive things. I remember how vilified he was. He was a laughingstock. How could a Hollywood B actor become a president? Okay, he was a governor 2 terms in California, but Trump doesn't even have that. But he became a president, and today people do not laugh at him. He's taken seriously. And the Soviet Union collapsed under him. So you could say it wasn't him. Come on, you always give president credit things that happened in this period of time. But I'll tell you something, I don't think it's any one president. I think history is an ongoing drama, an unfolding drama. Every leader has its juncture and inherits what came before him and will pass on what goes afterwards. So I don't see it in quite so stark terms that a president either is going to be the savior or is going to be the destroyer. It doesn't work that way. There's a balance. This is a country that's a very balanced country. You have to also add into the equation that it's rare that Mr. Trump will also have both the Senate and the House of Representatives, both majority Republican. Some call that a mandate, but that's what it is. So I think it's important to stop wringing our hands and stop crying and grieving, and looking at things in some broader context. And if some of you take what I'm saying politically, which is completely not the intention, I'm not being political here, I'm not Republican or Democrat, this is completely nonpartisan or parochial. This is about looking at events and seeing what we learn when things are astounding, or things are stunning, or things are shocking, or even upsetting. However what words you use, that's your choice. That's the key point here. And I hope that the words are received as they are intended. And I'm more than happy to hear from you. If you have comments, you have rebuttals, you have different ways of looking at it, so be it. This is the perspective that, as I understand it, and as I was watching things in the Promised Land, it was very, as I said, surreal, watching the unfolding of something that I was quite stunned by myself, But it just goes to show you, it's important to have times like that because it shakes you up as well. Makes you see you don't get it all, you don't have it all figured out. I find that to be very refreshing. So with that, let me bid everybody and all of us with the clarity, the vision, the fortitude, the strength and courage to recognize the invisible hand in our lives. We all have that invisible hand. And sometimes human plans get in the way. We have all kinds of plans. Sometimes we have to let go and let the spontaneous happen, let the unexpected happen. You travel somewhere, you may have intentions, but then you let it happen. You step back, and you meet somebody, you have an interesting conversation, things emerge. And may the new president, as I said, be blessed with the clarity and wisdom and sensitivity that God blesses leaders to lead properly. And may this actually be the beginning of the New World Order, a New World Order which is dominated by the pursuit of goodness and kindness, acts of goodness and kindness, the pursuit of virtue, the pursuit of all the spiritual timeless values that transcend the immediate comfort zones, the finances and trade and immigration and all the details. Those foundational elements that have always been the heartbeat and the soul of what makes human beings, what makes nations enduring, what makes the human race in general a race that lives up to its calling, created in the divine image each one of us is, a divine calling to bring some divine reality into this material world, to make it into a divine home. So may each of us be blessed to see things in that way, see these events as opportunities to be able to wake us up, wake everybody up to a new reality that we are blessed to be part of, the unfolding of the drama of bringing a new world order, a world which will be dominated, in the words of Isaiah, a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. This has been Simon Jacobson. My time slot is usually 8:15 Wednesdays. Here, due to travels, as I mentioned, I began a little later. And I bring you all warm greetings from the Holy Land, which I literally got off a plane just shortly, right before I began this broadcast. And until next Wednesday, on the regular time slot, everyone have a very blessed week. And may we usher in this new world order in a really peaceful way, in a pleasant way, all in joy and happiness. Be well, everyone.